by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAC.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And he's back. Peter Duke here, on my own again. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you're joining me today. I'm getting used to doing this thing by myself. I was watching my friend George Webb this morning doing a video by himself, and I'm always quite impressed by people who have the ability to kind of stand in an empty room and look at a camera and pretend like there's a big audience out there and there's a bunch of people listening to you. Because getting those subtle cues from people as you're talking to them is a big part of a conversation, and pretending that you're actually having a conversation is a trick that I'm trying to get better at. So we'll see how I do today. But in any case, I want to put out there that I would like these podcasts, because I am live streaming, to be more of a conversation. So if you guys have any questions, put a Q in front of them in the chat box, and then I'll check them out. I'm stuttering now, and I'm being reminded of people who criticize me for stuttering, but I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best that I know how to do. In any case, I have been thinking a lot about what the implications of Donald Trump being elected are. As I've mentioned on this show before, I am unregistered to vote. I don't have any particular dog in this fight at this point. Do I think that it's better that Donald Trump got elected than Kamala Harris? I don't know the answer to the question. And the reason that I don't know the answer to the question is because we haven't been able to see what gets done yet. And I'm trying to stay in the frame of, as Parmenides might say it, what is actually happening. And so to that end, I watched a video this morning here, I'll pull it up, that Christine Jones highlighted. Present, share screen. And it is this video of Donald Trump talking about education. So let me maximize this. I have to share it. Here we go. So let's play this, and then I'll talk about it a little bit. Here we go.
Tuition costs at colleges and universities have been exploding, and I mean absolutely exploding, while academics have been obsessed with indoctrinating America's youth. The time has come to reclaim our once great educational institutions from the radical left, and we will do that. Our secret weapon will be the college accreditation system. It's called accreditation for a reason. The accreditors are supposed to ensure that schools are not ripping off students and taxpayers, but they have failed totally. When I return to the White House, I will fire the radical left accreditors that have allowed our colleges to become dominated by Marxist maniacs and lunatics. We will then accept applications for new accreditors who will impose real standards on colleges once again and once and for all. These standards will include defending the American tradition and Western civilization, protecting free speech, eliminating wasteful administrative positions that drive up costs incredibly, removing all Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucrats, offering options for accelerated and low-cost degrees, providing meaningful job placement and career services, and implementing college entrance and exit exams to prove that students are actually learning and getting their money's worth. Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies, policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
All righty. Let me get rid of this. Where's my mouse? Here we go. So this is a good lead-in for what I wanted to talk about today. And specifically, and let me point out how I got here. I'm going to share this tab instead. If you go to the Duke Report and you scroll down to the far right corner, everything that you want to know about me, Peter Duke's links, is here in the lower right-hand corner of the Duke Report. And the number one thing that I put up here is the 7 things that you need to know to make your project a success, which was an article that I wrote 20 years ago. And let me see if I can share that. Share this tab instead. Oh, look. Somebody thinks that I should be in Who's Who of America. I don't know. Leave a comment. Do you think, comment below. Do you think that I should be in Who's Who of America? I believe that my brother is in Who's Who. My mother was very, very excited when my brother became listed in Who's Who. But in any case, I'm getting off the track here. The 7 things that you need to know to make your project a success. So as many of you know, I was a creative director for a while. And what that means is that I was in charge of defining the problems that the creative teams needed to solve and then making sure that they came up with solutions for those problems. A lot of people think that creative director has something to do with, art or drawing or design. All of those things are incumbent. You have to understand how all of those things work, but I took a design class from a professor at USC named Jim DeFrance, and every single assignment that I had, it was the greatest academic experience I had in my life because it was a design class, and every assignment was written. Every assignment was you had to define what it is that you were designing, and that turned out to be a really good thing. And that leads me back to this this video with Donald Trump, where I'll jump back into this for a second. I'm sprigging out. I apologize. There are 7 things that you need to know in order to make your project a success, as far as I'm concerned. And I spent about 20 years asking the same questions in meetings. And the 7 questions are: what's the problem that you're trying to solve? How are you going to measure what that thing is that the problem that you're trying to solve? And then the next 5 things are called positioning, which are basically how do you market this thing in such a way that people will understand that the problem that you're trying to solve is the reason that they're getting involved with it. And those other 5 things are who's the audience? What's the name of the thing that you are designing? What is the category that it competes in? What are the major benefits of that thing that you're designing? And who are you competing against? But I'm not going to end. I have a little diagram. So the first thing is problem, the second thing is success, and then the thing is about the next 5 things: the audience, the product name, the product category, the major benefit, and the competitor's product, is that they're all attached to one another. That is, you can't adjust one without taking a look at the other 4 that are impacted by whatever that thing is that you're adjusting. But I'm going to stick with the first 2 today, which is what's the problem and what are the success criteria that you're going to use in order to measure that. And I'm going to use the Donald Trump example as a kind of a springboard for this, because I didn't really know what I was going to do before I started the show, and I saw this video, and I thought, well, this is a good one. So I took notes while I was watching President Trump say what he had to say, and my notes start off with his definition of the people that he's going up against being the radical left, and his idea that he's going to get rid of quote-unquote radical left ideas that are in colleges. And my question, and he said that he wants to get rid of, he wants to reestablish what are the real standards, and the real standards that he listed were Western civilization. And then he goes on to kind of like list a bunch of things, but at no place in his description of what those quote unquote Western civilization standards are did he talk about the inalienable rights that are listed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. He doesn't talk about life for liberty and the pursuit of happiness. He does talk about seizing funds, which I think is probably a good idea, but at the same time, there's a bunch of other things that I think are probably contingent that would be necessary in order for me to, approve of that idea. And so that brings us back around to the whole idea of what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and what are our success criteria? That is, how do we measure that thing that we're trying to do? And being able to measure it is a really important step, because if you can't measure what it is that you're doing, then you don't know whether or not you're succeeding. So, for example, in the last Trump administration, he was going to build the wall and he was going to stop all of the illegal immigration, but then that whole thing got convoluted into this battle about whether or not we should build a physical wall, or whether or not, Palmer Luckey kind of famously said that he was going to build an electronic wall, and now he's a Bilderberger, and he's building drones that supposedly can enforce the border. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but the big idea is that we weren't looking at the problem that we were trying to solve. Immigration's not the problem. Illegal immigration isn't even really the problem. The problem is lack of control of the population. And part of my issue with the conversation about illegal immigration and the border and all of this stuff since whenever this rhetoric started, is that if you look at it in a Hegelian frame, and you see illegal immigration in all of these countries all over the world, all of the Western countries, as a problem that can be solved by electronic identification that's tied to either a central bank. I was watching James Corbett today. Central bank digital currency, which everybody's talking about. Nobody's talking about private bank digital currency, which is, they've got all of these different cryptocurrencies that are called, they're called stable coins. And stable coins are cryptocurrency, or they're digital currency. I don't think they're all crypto, that are pegged to the value of a certain thing. Maybe they're pegged to the value of Bitcoin, or they're pegged to the value of gold. But in any case, they're not public, so they're not central bank digital currencies. They would be private bank digital currencies. And in any case, if you tie that idea of the digital ID to the digital currency, then you have a system where basically people will do what they're told, because if they don't, they can't eat, they can't travel, they can't be alive, they can't live. So those things wind up becoming an issue, and which brings us back to, okay, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? If we're trying to solve illegal immigration, that's great. Let's talk about all of the different ways that you can do that. Building the wall was one way that you could do it. I think that there were, for decades, if not centuries, the way that America controlled illegal immigration is that we made sure that the economies of the countries around us were in good enough shape that those people in those countries didn't want to leave. It's not very complicated. Like, you don't really need a wall, right? The United States didn't need a wall for years because it was you could make a good living in Canada. There were a lot of people, Americans, who left the United States for Canada during the Vietnam War, but you didn't get a lot of people illegally moving back and forth. It was a small percentage of people that did that, and so you have to look at what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and then you have to come up with whatever the solutions are. You have to list the solutions and then benchmark those suggestions against the feasibility and how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take, and what are the impacts of those ideas. Build the wall was one idea. It was a great meme. There's still a guy walking around 8 years later with a brick suit on. He's like a human walking meme. But in any case, the issue becomes, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And one of the things that I've noticed over and over and over again in politics is that we don't have a lot of problems being framed in a way that have a conversation about what the solutions are. That is, as a creative director, I would stand in a room, usually in front of a whiteboard, and we would write all of the ideas on the board. And then we would have discussions about which ideas were good ideas and which ideas were not bad ideas. There was actually a whole kind of like Disney process that I went through of blue sky, concept development, and then feasibility, where we would take all of these ideas and we would rank them, and then we would talk about the pros and cons of the ideas and how much they were going to cost and how long they were going to take. And so you had this kind of like normal kind of evolution of ideas that wound up coming up with, the best roller coaster or the best theme park ride or the best exhibit in a museum. These are the types of things that I was involved in. And it was a well thought out and executed process. Politics destroys critical thinking because instead of having these kind of Lincoln Douglas style debates where you get two intelligent people who both have valid arguments talking to each other in a very kind of platonic way about how they think that the best solution can be achieved. You have people picking teams. You have red team, you have blue team, you have, Republicans, Democrats, conservative, liberals, whatever you want. Which is why when Trump paints an entire group, the quote unquote radical left, look, they are radical. Okay, they are leftist, but let's not talk about what the label is. Let's talk about what the ideas are that they are proposing, and then benchmark that against whatever the constitutional mandate is. And I guess that's my big problem, is that I do think that life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all men are created equal, and the Bill of Rights are what define America. And Western civilization is not in the Constitution. It's not there. And in fact, there are certain things in the Constitution that are kind of, they go against that. And unless people understand that there was a Reformation and there was a Counter-Reformation, you had a very Venetian way of looking at the world, and you had a very Florentine way of looking at the world. And they didn't all agree. So the Renaissance was not like this one homogeneous thing where everybody agreed with one another. There was definitely arguments. I mean, some of the biggest wars, the Reformation resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Like, it wasn't all like, sunshine and lollipops. So determining what the things are that what I wanted to do today, and I'm stuttering, and I know I'm stuttering. What I wanted to do today is that I wanted to impart to the people who are watching this video the idea that you need to come up with your problems that you think need to be solved. And then you need to come up with your own criteria for how you measure those things. Because if you don't, and if you're depending on the media, and I don't care what media you're dependent on. I don't care if it's James Corbett or CNN or whoever it is that you're dependent on. If you're not actually picking your own success criteria for why this administration will succeed or doesn't succeed, then you're just going to be at the whim of whoever's fan club you become a member of. You'll become a member of the Tucker fan club, or you'll become a member of some other fan club, the Joe Rogan or the Rachel Maddow. It doesn't matter. The idea is that if you don't have your own success criteria for deciding whether or not Trump is going in the direction, or the Trump administration is going in the direction that you want them to, then you're in for 4 years of a roller coaster ride. And I'm not sure that we're not in for 4 years of a roller coaster ride anyway. So what do I mean by that? All of this stuff that he says about education, that's great. I'm not sure that I've done a lot of research on education. I've read Charlotte Ezerbit and John Taylor Gatto and Anthony Sutton, and I understand how the Rhodes Scholarship and the Skull and Bones Associations have infiltrated the school system and corrupted what Curtis Yarvin refers to as the cathedral. And they've done it in a very insidious and systematic way over centuries. I mean, it's over 100 years now that this has been going on. And so I don't think that you get rid of that in 4 years without doing something radical. And it's got to be based on principles. The Rhodes Scholars have fundamentally changed the way that Americans think about their relationship with the British Empire. And I say the British Empire because the British Empire is still a thing. One of the results of the 100 years of Rhodes Scholarship impact on the American history discipline in universities is that we don't know why World War I started. We don't know why World War II started. We don't know why there's a war in Ukraine right now, or there's a war in Israel. If you want to in about 4 hours, if you want to figure it out and catch up, you can go listen to the podcast Palmerston Zoo, which is a recreation that was something done by the LaRouche organization in 1994. So this is how long people have been actively talking about it. And on the Duke Report, and you can catch up. You'll have a good frame. You'll have I'm not telling you that you're going to learn it all or you're going to understand everything, but you'll have a good frame and an understanding why Americans don't actually understand what the history of the world is for the last 500 years. Because there's been and it's not just Americans, because I'm sure that if they were doing it, if they were sending Rhodes Scholars to the United States in order to rewrite history, then I have no doubt that in every other English-speaking country and probably in every French-speaking country, they were doing the same thing. So people don't have a really good frame of understanding what real history is. Likewise, the Skull and Bones guys went over to Germany. They learned psychology from Wilhelm Wundt. They brought psychology over to the United States, and they used it ostensibly to figure out how to create mind control operations for mass public on the mass public. And at the same time that they were breaking people, they were giving a whole different set of people who were probably oblivious to the first group of people jobs, fixing all of these people that they've broken. It's the self-licking ice cream cone. So the psychology discipline is fundamentally broken in the American education system. If it's not fake, there are so many parts of it that are flawed and not correct that it's not just about going in and getting rid of the quote-unquote radical left in the university system. The entire system has been corrupted from the inside, and there needs to be I think that the only way that you fix it is that you have to diversify it. I mean, they're going to kick it back to the States, but George Soros has proven that the globalists are very comfortable in the American format of going in and impacting 50 states if they can't do it on a federal level. Going in and getting all of the Secretary of States in swing states elected so that they can control the voting mechanisms in those states. So it really needs to go back down to the individual person. It needs to go back down to the original parents. But the parents at this point have been so dumbed down by this 100-year-old system that's been paid for by the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, ostensibly, with the other people, kicking in later, J.P. Morgan, that parents are ill-equipped to be able to deal with this stuff. And I'm not making an excuse for them. I think that it is something that needs to happen, but it's not enough to just kick the quote-unquote radical left out of the university systems. It's not enough. The whole system is corrupt. And it's corrupt because at the earliest level, I'm talking about the kindergarten programs that the federal government has been funding for 40 or 50 years now. Quick Start, or what's it called? Head Start. All of these programs eliminate critical thinking. I was thinking about this before the show started. My brother was the captain of the Knowledge Bowl team in high school, and I think that his team actually won the U.S. championship in Knowledge Bowl. And I was thinking about this Knowledge Bowl thing. What's the difference between Knowledge Bowl and a debate? Because we used to have debate leagues, right? And the difference between Knowledge Bowl and debate is like, how many facts can you memorize? And that's the complete opposite of critical thinking. It's insidious that we have taken the word knowledge, okay, and we have substituted it for thinking, because knowing something is not the same as thinking. If you can think, you can figure things out. If you are dependent upon knowing things that you don't know, and learning means that you memorize things that you know instead of coming up with processes like my 7 things that you need to know in order to be able to solve creative problems, then you're completely dependent upon the ideas of other people. And I am of the firm belief that people are all born. We may not be born with the same intelligence, but we are all born with the same curiosity. And that curiosity is that thing that separates us from the beasts. It's the thing that makes everything that Jeremy Bentham and David Hume and all of these other so-called philosophers or paragons of knowledge. It's nonsense, right? It's all nonsense, and I can be accused of oversimplifying, but I think that we're at a point right now where we need to really be simple. We need to break things down. I read a great essay that somebody recommended in this book, George Orwell, All Art is Propaganda, and the name of the essay is, I got it marked here. It is Politics and the English Language. Highly recommend it. And basically what Orwell is saying in this book is that people make sentences too damn complicated. and they overuse cliches. And when they do that, they take your thinking ability away from you. And he calls it lazy writing. This is one book that I recommend. There's another book that I'm reading too called The Importance of Language. And again, this is edited by this guy named Max Black. And I don't believe that Max Black has the same worldview that I do. But it's Aldous Huxley, Samuel Butler, C.S. Lewis, and a bunch of other people. And it's essays on the way that words work and the way that we use words. All right, so where am I going with this? I'm going to see if I have got any questions here. Gerald Brown. Gerald Brown said 4 years ago, Chris Hunter, I don't know who Chris Hunter is, said that NATO hacking state...
Hunter.
What?
Chris the IP.
Oh, Chris the IP hunter. Okay. 4 years ago, Chris the IP hunter said that NATO hacking station in Zagreb changed the vote counts. Why not this year? Or did they? But was it not enough? Okay, so this is a great example of a question that, why would you expect Peter Duke knows the answer to this question? Like, what frame do you have? I'm not trying to put you on the spot because you're not here, but you're right here. People can guess about this, but unless they have inside information and unless they're actually working for the NSA, why would you expect that anybody could answer this question? And this is why I was going to start with Parmenides, okay, which is like and this brings me back to George Webb. 7 or 8 years ago, George Webb was pounding this mantra, it's all in the metadata, it's all in the metadata, it's all in the metadata, meaning there are things that you can know and there are things that you can't know, and you can try to tease out what you do know. You can try to tease out what happened from what you do know, but you're not going to be able to know what you don't know. So I don't know the answer to this question, Jerry. And I don't know why you would expect that I know the answer to this question. So I'm curious why you asked the question. And I'd be curious in having you let us know that right now. So, yeah, what I'm looking for right now is I'm looking for people who want to know how I think about breaking down these problems, because that's what I'm working on right now. In this book, in this article on the politics of language by George Orwell, my big takeaway is that two things that I've been harping on about for the last couple of months have been the word logos, which I believe is misunderstood in its use in the Bible, and something that I picked up from Webster Tarpley called epistemological warfare. Epistemological warfare is the warfare on our knowledge. So getting back to Donald Trump talking about universities and fixing the universities, we have been assaulted for as long as any of us have been alive. In fact, this goes back so many generations that it's hard to tell if there was ever a time when it didn't exist, which is why critical thinking winds up becoming the only defense for any of this stuff, because we don't know what we don't know. And if we've been lied about why World War I started, why World War II started, why hundreds of millions of people have died, in this epistemological warfare frame, it's not just the communists that can take credit for the number of people who have died. Epistemological warfare is responsible for the deaths caused by armies on both sides. So epistemological warfare is responsible for, 500 million people dying in the last century. It's a lot, right? But epistemological is a big mouthful. And if I say epistemological warfare to people, I think that they're probably going to glaze over. And this is what I pulled out of reading this article by Orwell that he wrote in 1946. So I'm probably going to reframe it and start just calling it knowledge warfare. Because if you control what people believe based on what they think happened, somebody yesterday was misattributing the beginning of a war And instead of arguing with him about what the facts were, I let him know that he didn't have them all. Because I'm trying to approach dealing with people on Twitter from a position of kindness in trying to get them to understand that they don't actually have all of the facts. And if they did, if we all had the facts, then my guess is things like democracy could work. But if people are not getting the facts, if people are not getting the information they need, then I don't actually trust them to vote. And so it becomes kind of a chicken and the egg scenario where if Donald Trump wants to fix the universities without fixing the critical thinking prerequisites that are required in order to get people qualified to be in universities, or maybe you don't even need to be in a university. Like I didn't graduate from college. Mark Zuckerberg didn't graduate from college. Bill Gates didn't graduate from college. Okay, how did I get to where I got to in the business world? By asking questions, by fearlessly asking questions. I never forget the first time I was in a meeting at Virgin when I used this phrase. I said, "I'm not sure that I understand what you're talking about. Could you please explain it to me again?" And people looked at me like I was an alien. Like they couldn't believe that anyone would be so bold as to claim that they didn't know something in an executive meeting, a director level executive meeting. That's the only way that I ever learn anything is by asking questions. And assuming that you know something and it's wrong is a problem. And the issues that we have today, I think I see it everywhere. I went and I visited my doctor. I told him that, I had a medical issue that I told him about, and he gave me some recommendations, and then I went home and I did everything that he recommended, and none of them worked. And then I changed my diet, and then I changed my workout schedule, and all of my symptoms disappeared. They were gone. I went back and I told him about it, and he thought, "Oh, you mean it's not chemical, it's mechanical?" And I said, "I guess so, but I cured myself." And so he looked pretty dumbfounded when I explained it to him, and he looked like he was going to run out and do whatever it is that I had done, and that just came from my using my critical thinking skills. I didn't use his quote unquote expert status as a default for my problem solving abilities, and so determining what you believe in as far as the problems that need to get solved and how you are going to measure those things winds up becoming probably the most important task for the next 2 months, and then following that for the next 4 years. So what do you believe in? What are the things that are important to you? So as far as education is concerned, critical thinking is the most important thing to me. So any changes that happen in our education system, they need to move in the direction of getting people to think critically. Getting rid of leftists is not enough, because they'll just come up with something else, right? We need to increase, so Common Core, all of these, which was brought in by George W. Bush, all of these things that have been happening to our education system have been happening for over 100 years. It started with Carnegie and Rockefeller. They brought over the Prussian education system. If you want to read a book, read Deliberately Dumbing Us Down by Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt. You can read John Taylor Gatto's books. You can read The Poison Loving Cup, which is out of print, but you can find a PDF of it if you go to the Duke Report book section, which will detail how the Rhodes Scholarship rewrote American history, so that we don't know any of these things. Okay, we don't know that our biggest enemy on the planet is Great Britain. Not the people of Great Britain, not even the people who vote in Great Britain, the people who control Great Britain, because that's all a school play too. Parliament, all of that stuff. They've the what do they call it? Hall of Lords? No, House of Lords. House of Lords is supposedly all ceremonial. And it may be ceremonial when they're in the House of Lords, but when the Lords are not in the House of Lords, that's when the real decisions get made. So we need to start to come up with our own success criteria and our ability to measure those things. So my success criteria for the education system will be, are you doing things to increase the critical thinking of Americans? Because if you're not doing anything to increase the critical thinking of Americans, it's all window dressing to me. It doesn't make any difference. It may get a bunch of people who wear red hats excited and jumping up and down, but as long as people are not engaging the who, what, why, where, when, we call it a journalistic mindset. They used to just call that thinking. Like, when did we offshore or offload critical thinking to journalists? Probably when we got too busy, because we got put into these compartmentalized lives. They came up with this meme, dual income, no kids, which also AKA feminism, which is getting women into the workforce, which increased the price of housing, which required 2 incomes to pay a mortgage, which was all destruction of the family. So all of that portends to a lack of critical thinking. So we need to get back to critical thinking. So I don't care what Donald Trump says. I don't care what Donald Trump, I don't care what words come out of his mouth. I want to see what he does. There was a rumor that ran around for a couple of days that Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley were going to be back in the government. They're not. There's a rumor that's going around right now that Marco Rubio is going to be Secretary of State. You know, the person that has been announced as the UN ambassador is a Zionist, and putting Zionists in the government is not moving in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. Because if you don't understand that Zionism is part of this British Empire cabal that loves to have people blame the Jews, okay, that's what it's all about. The Jews are there to be the scapegoat. That's their job. And the piece of real estate that we call Greater Israel controls the land bridge between Eurasia and Africa. And as long as that area is in turmoil, the people, the thalassocracy, because Great Britain, the Anglo-American establishment is a thalassocracy. It maintains its global hegemon by forcing all commerce over the water. As long as the thalassocracy can move all commerce over the water, then it maintains its hegemon. And the way that you do that is by making sure that there are no railroads that connect Africa and Eurasia. And your railroads are a 200-year-old technology. This is a great way to do it. Just to create as much turmoil in that area of the world as possible, and then that continues the people who have invested in ships and shipping and in navies. It keeps them in power for time immemorial. So all they need to do is continue to keep people fighting in Ukraine and continue people fighting in the Middle East, and just long enough for everybody to adopt a digital currency and a digital ID, and then once income. What's the income called?
Universal
UBI, Universal Basic Income. So you got UBI, digital ID, and a CBDC or PD, private bank digital currency. It doesn't matter. And then they can stop having all of the major geographic wars, and they can have all kinds of other much more localized things happen, school shootings and stuff like that. All right, let's go look at the questions again. Do you think you are giving critical thinking too much agency? No, I don't. I don't. I think am amazed at how long I go every day before I run into a person who's using any kind of critical thinking skills. Like, I can walk out that door and go to the store and talk to people on the street and then come back home, and I will have heard not one sentence of critical thought coming out of anybody's mouth. And I do think that it is it's the, as George would say, the answer to the test. Let's see. Michelle Luckerson vlog. What are your ideas on fixing our K through 12 education departments? Again, critical thinking is something that we are all born with. We've all experienced the little kid who asks us why in an uncomfortable situation, and we don't know how to answer them because we haven't been trained to be able to manage the question of our 3-year-old, right? So when we get to a point where sidebar, this is a funny story. I was in a nursery furniture store shopping one day when my ex-wife was pregnant, and there was a little 3-year-old running around asking her dad if she could have this or she could have that, and he had the best answer. This is a pro tip for any parents out there. He told her yes to everything that she asked, with the follow-up, when you're 18. Dad, I want that. You can have that. I can? Yes, when you're 18, come back and get it. It was pretty funny. What are my ideas on fixing K through 12 education? Stop putting people in rows, started putting them in circles. Don't teach them facts, teach them how to ask questions. Teach kids how to use their brains in order to solve problems instead of requiring them to memorize facts. My daughter went through this entire ridiculous, whatever they call it. When I was a kid, it was new math, and it was a process where you had to not only write down the answer to the question, which in many cases you could just do in your head, but you had to explain what the process was that you used, and there was an equal amount of weight in your explanation as there was in the answer to the question. Well, a lot of people, like Matthew Crawford would be the first person that I come up with off the top of my head. A lot of people just figure that stuff out when they're kids, and I can tell you why. Like, I can do my do my 9 tables. And I can tell you that there was a trick that I learned that the sum always adds up to 9 when you're doing, so 18, 1 plus 8 is 9, 27, 2 plus 7 is 9, 36, 3 plus 6 is 9. So it's a way to prove yourself. But after I learned that, it took me about 2 or 3 days before I just had my 9 tables memorized, and I didn't think about it anymore. Well, so for me to go and write all of that stuff down and then not get a correct answer because I didn't do that, that's ludicrous. So the answer, my ideas are: stop putting people in rows, stop making them memorize facts, teach them how to ask questions, and dialogue is super important. Without, again, I'll get accused of being oversimplifying. Aristotle is a bunch of axioms. It's a bunch of, or Cicero or Marcus Aurelius or any of these people who are supposedly like the smart folks that we're supposed to go and learn. They basically give you lists of smart ideas. Plato, love him or hate him, okay, all of his wisdom is encapsulated in the form of a conversation. And I think that having conversations is a faster way to make your brain get bigger than any single thing that you can do. And especially if you're being challenged. And so the idea that kids sit in rows, this comes from Prussia. I mean, the academy of Plato, people sat in a circle. They talked to each other. A class was, 12 or 13 people. It was 12 or 13 people who were talking to each other. I think that if you simply changed the format of K through 12 from people sitting in rows looking at blackboards to sitting in circles looking at each other, asking each other questions, you would see an exponential growth in the amount of smart people coming out of schools. I think it would explode. It's a 3,000-year-old solution. It's not a bad one. All right. TS says, at least as good of a question, two better questions. I don't have any context here. Is it a problem? Oh, okay. Okay. I think I understand what he's saying. Two better questions. Is it a problem? Why is it a problem? By whose belief or false premise? Okay, so these are critical thinking questions. You get a cookie, TS. Okay. These are all critical thinking questions. Asking those questions for every problem that gets presented to you indicates that you're thinking critically. So if we can get people to start doing that, then I think we can think our way out of this. I don't know what the solution is. Like I said, one of the issues, and it's funny because the theosophists say the same thing. I was listening to Matthew Crawford, and I think it was called Escape Key on Substack. I was listening to something by them. And the theosophists, it was an article about something called Game B. I don't know if you guys have heard of Game B. Game B is Eric and I'm going to say Eric and Harvey Weinstein. They're what? Brett. I know Brett. I'm making a joke. Eric and Brett. But I do think somebody should make a movie called Brett and Eric and Bob and Harvey about the Weinstein brothers, all four of them. In any case, Game B, the theosophists don't. Or the Game B people, I'm mixing ideas, and I apologize. The game people don't actually know what the end product of their game is, and their claim is that ideas will emerge. They're very much into this quote unquote emergent technology or emergent ideas, which I just think is Hermetic Gnosticism nonsense. But in any case. I do believe in our logos. I do believe in the human being. Matthew Arrett might call it our ability to appreciate beauty, or there's a bunch of Schiller stuff that I haven't memorized yet. But the big idea is that if we are using our critical thinking skills, then we as human beings, being blessed by God with our ability to do this critical thinking thing, can figure out a way out of this. But not thinking critically is the mindset of slaves. So, and that's why in None Dare Call It Conspiracy, the solution to that book was a book which I think is a good book, except that the solution at the end is vote harder, and it was written in 1972. The book Tragedy and Hope 101, the solution at the end is build your own networks, come up with your own economy, and there was one other thing. I don't know, learn to barter. I can't remember what the solutions were, but again, Joe Plummer and he was trying to come up with the best thing that he knew at that moment. But understanding this fundamentally, that what we're up against is that we're up against a group of oligarchs, and these are families. The Rothschilds are some of them, but they're not all of them. These are families that have practiced a methodology for hundreds, if not thousands of years of controlling the information and the way that we consume information. And the only thing that we have, we don't have anything material that we can use in order to defeat them. We do have our logos. We do have our critical thinking skills. We do have our ability to communicate with one another, to measure, to relate, to form arguments. These are things that, I'm sorry, dogs and dolphins don't have them. Okay, we do. And the oligarchs are insistent on making us believe that we are just beasts. That's the whole point of Darwinism. That we're not good enough. That's the whole point of transhumanism, is to prove, or AI, is to prove to all of the slaves out there that they're never going to be good enough. And the solution is the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz solution, which is click your heels 3 times and say there's no place like home, because you have the ability to think critically. You have the ability to ask these 2 questions. So TS, bravo. Okay, and two better questions. Better is a value judgment, maybe. I think that they're both good questions. I'm not sure whether or not is it a problem or why is it a problem whose belief or false premise are better. But they're both good. I'll give you that. They're both good. I'd have to think about it when I'm not talking to other people on a podcast. Let me see. Zaga Nostra. Do people of faith navigate their world by critically thinking or deeply felt beliefs? This is the tightrope that I'm walking with the end of my book, because I think that the translation of the word logos, which doesn't really have the problem I'm balancing right now is that Orwell says that you should keep things really simple and that you shouldn't use too many Greek or Latin terms. The problem is that the word logos means a huge amount of things, and so I can use those ideas in English, but it takes up probably minimum 4 or 5 words, where in Greek it's just 1 word. The question is do you get a bunch of people to try to understand what the Greek word means, or do you just write it in English? I'm probably going to default to writing it in English. But the point that I'm trying to make is that I believe encoded in the Gospels specifically, and Sermon on the Mount, okay, is, and John more than the others, is if Jesus is Logos incarnate, if Logos is critical thinking and communication, let's just call it critical thinking and communication, then what Jesus is talking about when he is making reference to himself is critical thinking. And the issue then becomes trying to get Christians to understand that he's telling you to think. He's telling you to think. And you should have faith in your ability to think. And that winds up causing cognitive dissonance. So figuring out a way to communicate that is my current challenge. And I think it's the biggest one, and I also think that it's endemic in the epistemological warfare that we're dealing with. Christianity is and the belief in getting back to Donald Trump and whatever his definition of education is. Asking Christians what their definition of Christianity is probably a good place to start too. But I do think that Jesus was talking about critical thinking. I do think that he was talking about natural law. And I do think that those things are all incumbent in the Gospels. And if you can get people who are secular, non-religious to, is that correct? If you can get people who are non-religious to understand the value of Christianity, then I think that you're moving in the right direction. Okay. Arthur Stone says Parmenides' narrator is inspired by a vision of a goddess. Is letting go and blue sky thinking a necessary counterpart to formal critical thinking, a bit of yin and yang. I'll tell you how we split it up. So the Disney, and I used to have all of these cloisonne pins that I gave to my friend Harley as a Christmas present, and I wish I had gotten 2 sets. Maybe I got 2 sets and I gave them both away. I'm sad that I didn't. The beginning of the Disney creative process, the first 3 phases are what they call blue sky, concept development, and then feasibility. And there's a lot of different people who do different kind of guided or facilitated creative processes that use the same stages. But in blue sky, when you're trying after you have defined the problem that you're going to solve, in a blue sky session, you get a bunch of smart people together in a room, and they all come up with ideas. And in a blue sky session, there are no bad ideas. And that is, you don't want to have any negative commentary. You don't want to have any blockage to anybody's ideas. You want to let everybody, no matter how wild or far out their ideas are, you want to be able to allow them to get their thing written down on the whiteboard and get their idea out. Because, and I do miss, the thing that I miss about my last full-time job more than anything else is that my office, and I've heard Matthew Crawford talk about this, about the classrooms that he set up, and this might get back to the how do you fix K through 12. The best office that I ever had a long conference table that ran through the middle. I had a small office. It was very nice. It was the nicest office I ever had, but I was almost never in it because my office was next to a conference room, and the conference room had about a 30-foot conference table that ran through the middle. You could put, 30 or 40 people in that room comfortably. But 3 of the 4 walls, there was one wall that was windows, and the other 3 walls were whiteboards, floor to ceiling. Great room. And the thing is about that room is that when we were having these creative meetings, all the ideas got written down. Everything got written down on the wall, and they were written down in a place where everybody could sit and look at them and think about them because, like I said, the physiognomy, I guess you would call it, of this room. And it was funny because we called it the brainstorming room, the BS room, and everybody else called it the bullshit room because they said, oh, Peter and Harley are just in there bullshitting all day long. But we came up with good ideas in that room. And so the first step is blue sky. And then the second step is concept development. And in concept development, what you do is you walk into the room the next day, and all the ideas are still up there on the board, but everybody's had a chance to think about it or go to sleep and sleep on it. And they come back, and then you ask people to start to prioritize those ideas. That is, which ones do they think are the best ideas? And you get each one of these steps is a consensus building process because it's also about team building. It's making sure that when you get to the solution that you wind up with, that everybody's moving in the same direction, that everybody has agreed that the reason that we're moving in this direction is because we decided all of these things. So the next step in concept development is to prioritize all of those things that you came up with in the blue sky session. And at that point, usually we would have a bunch of guys in the room who could draw. People would start drawing things and putting pictures up on the wall so that people could kind of get an idea of what that thing is that we're looking at looks like. But it's in the concept development phase that you're allowed to criticize the things that were in the blue sky phase. So phase 1 is blue sky. Phase 2 is concept development. And then once you get the concept development done, then you hand it off to project managers who do nothing except do schedules and budgets. And they tell you how much something is going to cost and how long it's going to take. And then you make a feasibility decision based on how much budget you've got, how much time you've got. You know, a lot of these things wind up becoming self-evident. So I'm not sure that if I answered this question. He said it's a bit of yin and yang. At Disney, it's blue sky, concept development, feasibility. That's the way that you do it. All right. Joe N says, fix K through 12, multi-pronged but key component in exposing the dumbing down agenda and have online groups tackling the dumbing down issue head on and compiling and collaborating on alternatives. 100%. No, I think this is a good idea. This is a much better use of something called the Department of Education than using it to kind of like hang bait out for different school systems. Hey, if you adopt this way of testing your kids, we'll send you a check. Like, that's not That's how we got into this problem. So let me see. Zaganostra said, EMJ opened my mind on the meaning of logos. Yes, me too. And it's funny, though, that this is E. Michael Jones. He's got a book. I've got it over on the shelf there, Logos Rising. And he and I came to the same conclusion. He had already written the book, and somebody recommended the book to me after I had mentioned it on the show, that I was looking at John 1:1 because I was thinking that language is really the key to this whole thing, and isn't John 1:1 all about language? And then, lo and behold, Michael Jones had already written a book called Logos Rising, and the premise of that book is that logos doesn't just mean word. And if you understand the implications of that, the 2,000-year-long implication of that, then, or actually 2,024 years, to be exact, then you start to have questions. But it is the answer. It's the, as George says, it's the answer to the test. The way that we use words winds up framing. We use those words to frame our reality, and I looked at the clock and then the idea went out of my head. The way that we use words frame our reality, and if we don't take control of the way that we allow words to use us, then we're not going to be able to think our way out of this problem, and we need to think our way out. Americans during the Revolutionary War were some of the most literate people in the world. I'm not going to say that they weren't completely affected by media, because people like Benjamin Franklin owned printing presses, and those things that were being printed in the colonies were definitely a epistemological weapon, a knowledge weapon that was being used against the status quo, which was the British crown. But we're at a point right now, and this may be the most important point that I make today, which is that I can still have this conversation with you guys. That is, I can still stand here in my 460 square foot apartment, and I can look into this camera lens, and my words come spilling out of your computer or your iPhone or whatever it is that you're looking at this on, and my ideas can impact you, and then your ideas, when you write back in the chat, can impact me. And so we have this kind of multi-directional way of communicating with one another electronically. Often the people that I'm having conversations with are in Australia or Europe or some other place that's, a long distance from me. And so the ability to be able to do that is really important. And they're trying to take that away right now. I mean, I think that I've noticed in Stripe, there are some forms that I have to fill out because I now have to pay for people who are members of the Duke Report who live in Great Britain. Great Britain wants me to pay taxes. New Zealand wants me to pay taxes. Canada wants me to pay taxes. So there's all these forms that I have to go fill out in Stripe now. I can't just, say thank you very much. All of the little flags want their cut. I'm at a threshold. I've made the threshold is lower or higher depending upon what country you're in. I think Great Britain has zero tolerance for making money without paying the government. As do I think all of the crown countries, as I would call them. Anyway, well, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes now. And if anybody's got any other questions, I should probably wrap up with the idea that coming up, I'll tell you the toothbrush story. So the last big project that I worked on was a Harry Reid pork barrel project called the Springs Preserve in Las Vegas, which was a $300 million paid for by you nexus for sustainability built in the most unsustainable place on the planet, Las Vegas, Nevada. And I wasn't political pretty much at all. I had a picture of George W. Bush in my office on the bulletin board behind my desk, which everybody thought was a joke. I'm sad to say that it wasn't a joke. I actually like George Bush, and I believed the 9/11 story. I don't know what to tell you. I was a sucker. And anyway, we had to have success criteria for the Springs Preserve, and the project manager came in and said, "What success criteria?" The metrics people are here. So there's people that will go out and they'll do testing. They'll test. They'll go out and run like the kind of nonsense that Frank Luntz does, but not political. This is kind of purely industrial psychology kind of stuff. And they said, well, how can we measure the impact on the target audience was school children? So we built this thing called the Springs Preserve, and they were going to bring busloads of children to indoctrinate them every day from all of the schools in Las Vegas, and we were supposed to get them to live a more sustainable life. And so the metric that we came up with was brushing your teeth, which is funny because James Corbett just did this thing called the commissar of toothbrushes, or the director of toothbrushes, or the minister of toothbrushes. That's what it was. So I likewise had a toothbrush metric. And I told the people who were doing the surveys, I said, go and ask school children who have not been to the Springs Preserve, who live in Las Vegas, whether or not they turn the water off when they brush their teeth. And then after they go to the Springs Preserve, ask them a week after they've gone to the Springs Preserve whether or not they turn off the water when they brush their teeth. And as I remember, I think that's what happened. And we did wind up having an impact. Like, we did do a good job of propagandizing these kids. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to use psychological warfare techniques like that to get people to do something like turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth, because I don't think that you're doing anything inherently evil when you do that. I think that is probably a good lesson. You can leave a comment below if you think it's not, or you can leave a comment in the chat. But that was the metric that we used. I continued, when I was sitting in a creative meeting and I was looking at a script or watching a video or looking at the way an interactive game worked, the question that was always going on in my head was, is this going to get somebody to turn off the water when they're brushing their teeth? And that became the rule of thumb, as it were, for looking at things. So, Michelle Lawson, I'll tell you something I'm very sorry about, and I don't remember the name of this guy, but there was a guy when we were working on this Springs Preserve project who was a video producer, and he was very good, but he had just seen Loose Change, and every single time I had a big place that had 8 edit bays, and every time I walked into an edit bay, nobody was working. And this guy was in there telling them about Loose Change. And after the 4th or 5th time that happened, I got rid of him. So whoever that guy was, I think he was German. He was very tall and slender. He wore a leather jacket. I don't remember his name. I think it was like Hans or Fritz or something like that. If you're watching this right now, I apologize. I should have paid more attention to you, but I was brainwashed. I don't know what else to say. Let me see. JBTGT3 says there's a section on Sutton's FR book about the pirate Jean Lafitte. Okay, I guess you're talking to somebody else and not me. All right, Arthur Stone says, thanks, Peter, great show. As always, lots to ponder. Thank you very much for joining us today. I am working on more stuff to post on Substack, and I will see you again next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.